Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Ash was orphan and was adopted by Kukui, movie. This story is In Search of a Family by Dark Knight 55. Before starting, if you are interested in Pokemon fanfictions, you can consider subscribing this channel and like this video, that will help a lot. Now let's dive in. Here's a short summary. Ash hasn't had a very happy childhood, being bounced from foster home to foster home ever since his mom died. All he ever wanted was a family who wouldn't abandon him, but so far he's had nothing but disappointment. Now let's get to the story. Ash sat in the waiting room, silently praying as the operation dragged on. "Please let my mom be all right," he begged, "please." His companion, a tiny Pichu, tried to comfort him, but he knew that nothing he could do could make the 5-year-old feel better. 4 hours ago, Ash and his mom had just finished shopping in Viridian City and were making their way back to Pallet Town when they came across Pichu in an alley, horribly injured and crying for help. Without even a second thought, Ash scooped him up into his arms and ran, trying to get him to the nearest Pokemon Center. That's when it happened. As him and his mom ran across the street, a car came racing around the corner, much too fast to stop in time. Without even a second to question it, Delilah pushed Ash out of the way, the boy rolling across the street as the car ran her over. "Mom! Mom!" Delilah coughed, a little bit of blood coming out of her mouth. "Ash, baby, no matter what happens, I love you, Mom, stay with me, please." Luckily, a passerby saw everything and called for help, and Delilah was airlifted to the nearest hospital. Once they arrived, Delilah was rushed into surgery, forcing Ash to wait outside as time dragged on. At last, the emergency room doors opened, and out stepped the doctor. Ash rushed over to him, his face pleading with the man to give him some good news. "Is she going to be okay?" The doctor shook his head. "I'm sorry, son, we did everything we could, but..." No. Ash clung to the doctor, pouring his heart out as the man tried to soothe him, though he knew nothing he could say would help. "Mommy, attention passengers, this is your captain speaking. We'll be landing in Alola shortly. Please have your seatbelts fastened, and your trays in the upright position. Thank you for flying Alolan Airlines, and have a wonderful day." Ash sighed, unable to enjoy the beautiful landscape. Here we go again. 5 years had passed since that fateful night, and his life had been nothing but misery. While the man who murdered his mom had been brought to justice, being charged with drunk driving and involuntary manslaughter, nothing could ever replace the gaping hole in his heart. With his birth father nowhere to be found, and no one on his mother's side of the family being contactable, Ash was an orphan. For a while, the kind Professor Oak had taken him in, already raising his grandson after Gary's parents passed away, but as time went on it was clear he couldn't take care of both. "I'm sorry, Ash," he told the boy. "I wish I could, but I'm not getting any younger, and between you, Gary, and the Pokemon I just can't give you all the care you need." Ash didn't hate the man for it, he really didn't. If anything, he respected him for taking care of him for as long as he had. Before Ash was shipped off to his next foster home, he and Gary had a long goodbye. "I wish you could stay, Ash," Gary had told him, "but I just know you'll find a family to take care of you." "Thanks, Gary. That means a lot. Take care, you too." But Ash never did find a family. It was always the same. Child care services would find a family who'd take him in, he'd stay there for a few months, but eventually they'd get rid of him for one reason or another. "He's too old, we can't afford an extra mouth, we're expecting a child soon and need the space," were just some of the excuses he'd heard. So he'd be sent on to the next family, and the cycle would repeat. He'd gone through so many homes that he'd exhausted all of the options in Kanto. So now he was on a plane to Alola, to the latest family willing to give him a chance. Not that he had very high hopes. "Why doesn't anyone want me?" he whispered to himself. "I'm not that bad, am I?" "Don't ever think like that," a voice in his head spoke up, reminding him of the only family he truly had. After that fateful night, the Pichu remained by his side. While Nurse Joy had been able to heal him completely, Pichu refused to part ways with Ash. He owed the boy his life, and with his mother gone he knew Ash needed someone to support him, so Officer Jenny let Ash take him with him. And ever since that day, the two were inseparable. Ash would never forget the day that Pichu finally evolved. It was the best day of both their lives, because that was the day Ash had learned he could understand Pokemon. He didn't know how, but the moment he heard actual words coming out of his best friend's mouth, he felt happy for the first time in years, and gave the little Pichu a great big hug. Of course, he wasn't a Pichu for long, for when he realized Ash could understand him, he immediately evolved into a Pikachu, a development that made them both happy. Why, Pikachu? Why can't I have a real family again? Pikachu sighed, and gave him a hug. I don't know, Ash, the electric type said. But I know all of those other families are missing out on a great guy. Ash smiled, and stroked Pikachu's fur, making his partner purr in delight. Thanks, pal. So, what do you think this one's like? Ash shrugged, not even really caring. Why should he if they were just going to get rid of him in less than a year? I don't know, what's it matter? You never know, Ash, this one could be the one. You always say that. Well, it could. Come on, Ash, can you try to be optimistic? For me? Ash groaned. Pikachu knew he couldn't refuse him when he gave him Growlithe eyes. Fine. I can try, but only for you. Thank you. So? I don't know, didn't the lady say they were Pokemon professors? Yeah. One studies Pokemon moves, and the other studies other dimensions, whatever that means. So they probably have a few Pokemon laying around the house, maybe even some starter Pokemon. As long as they don't have a Snubbull, I'm fine, Pikachu said with a shudder. Remember Madam Muchmoney? Ugh, don't remind me, Ash said with a groan. You'd think being adopted by a rich lady would be a dream come true, but the only thing she couldn't afford was to spend time with me. Yeah, well at least you weren't her Snubbull's chew toy. Ash cringed, feeling sorry for his best friend. Well, I doubt they'd make that mistake again, but if they did, I'll make them regret it. Pikachu smiled, and began licking Ash's face. Thanks, buddy. At least I know you'll always be there for me. Attention passengers, we have now reached the gate. Please exit the plane in an orderly fashion. Thank you for flying with us, and we hope you have a pleasant stay. Ash sighed, holding Pikachu to his chest with one hand and grabbing his meager belongings with another. Here we go again. This is it. I can feel it, Pikachu said, trying to cheer Ash up. At least one of us is looking forward to it. Pikachu sighed, and shook his head. He wished someone would adopt Ash and give him the love he deserved. He did his best, but he could only do so much. He just hoped that this time would be the last time. Is everything ready? For the last time, Kukui. Yes, Ash's plane will be landing soon, so you'd better get going. The male professor sighed, and lifted the brim of his cap. Although he and his wife had only been married for less than a year, they both wanted to start a family together. But to make sure they were ready, they wanted to foster a child first, and had gotten approval last week. At the moment, they were putting the finishing touches on their future ward's room. It wasn't big, just a little space in their loft, but the agency approved it as suitable for a child. I don't mean to put you off of this, the agent said before they signed the paperwork, but the boy you're looking after hasn't had a very loving life. He's been through so many foster homes that no one in his home region will take him in. It might take him a while to actually warm up to you. But the professors didn't care, and signed anyway. As far as they were concerned, that just wanted to make them do it even more. But even so, Kukui couldn't help but be nervous. Kukui, what's wrong? It's just, am I ready for this? I know we said it didn't matter when they told us about Ash, but I'm no therapist. Can we really give him the home he needs? Professor Burnett smiled, and kissed his cheek. We can, and we will. Arceus knows enough people have given up on him, but we won't. You'll be great, Kukui. Kukui smiled, and kissed her back. Thanks, honey. Kukui, Ash. Oh, right, an hour later, Professor Kukui was waiting at baggage claim for his foster son to arrive. He didn't have to wait long, for a raven-haired boy with a Pikachu on his shoulder soon appeared and approached him. Are you Professor Kukui? That I am. You must be Ash, right? Ash nodded. Thanks for letting me stay with you. I hope it's not too much of a bother. Nonsense. Burnett and I are looking forward to starting a family. Ash inwardly cringed at that. He'd heard that one too many times to count, but when the time came. Kukui ignored his silence, and gently began to stroke Pikachu. Hey, what's the big idea? Only Ash can. Oh yeah, that's the spot. Shoo. And this must be Pikachu, I'm guessing? You don't mind if he stays outside of his Pokeball, do you? He really doesn't like it in there. Of course I don't. How would you like it if I shoved you in a tiny little ball? I get it, buddy. Professor Kukui laughed, amused by their interactions. Not to worry, we don't mind. Actually, most people in Alola keep their Pokémon outside of their Pokeballs unless they absolutely can't. That was a relief. He didn't want to get kicked out before he even set foot in the house just because he wouldn't keep Pikachu out of sight, again. Now come on, Burnett's at home cooking up a big meal. You must be starving. The rumble of Ash's stomach answered before he could, making Ash chuckle. Yeah, I guess you can say that, typical Ash, Pikachu laughed from the boy's shoulder. Always thinking with his stomach and not his head. Shut up, Pikachu. Don't even get me started with you and ketchup. That's different. Ketchup makes everything taste better. Oh, your Pikachu likes ketchup, does he? Well, it's a good thing we have plenty of it. Burnett actually grows tomatoes in her garden, and she loves to make her own. Ash, I swear to God, if you screw this up, I will abandon you and live with them. Ash just rolled his eyes. Sure, buddy. A few minutes later, they arrived at the professor's beach house. Ash couldn't help but notice how small it was compared to Oak's lab, but considering that they'd told him Alola wasn't known for its battling scene, he thought it made sense. Welcome to Casa de Kukui. Feel free to make yourself at home. Burnett should be done with lunch soon. Thanks, will do. Ash opened the door, only to be immediately tackled by a puppy, who began to lick his face. Oh my gosh, a new friend. Hello, I'm Rockruff, and... Rockruff, down, sorry Ash, he's a little hyper. But Ash didn't mind, he just stroked Rockruff's fur until he settled down enough for Ash to push him off. It's okay, it wouldn't be the first time it's happened to me, is he yours? If you mean have I captured him, no, he's technically a wild Pokémon, but he followed me home one day and Burnett wouldn't let me turn him away. Ash smiled, and scratched the puppy behind the ear. Well, he is cute. Grr, Rockruff growled contentedly. Yeah, he's cute now, Pikachu groused. But he'll be trouble, just you wait. Pikachu, be nice. Just then, Burnett stepped in through the doorway. Ah, you must be Ash, welcome, please make yourself at home. Thank you for letting me stay. Of course. Now who's hungry? Ash and Pikachu's hands immediately shot up, only to put them down a minute later in embarrassment. If you don't mind. Burnett chuckled. Of course, help yourself. It had been a while since Ash and Pikachu had tasted such good food. They'd never starved, but some of his foster parents were better at cooking than others. He was happy to say that Burnett was definitely one of the better ones. Hey Ash, can you pass the ketchup, please? Ash rolled his eyes, but obliged. At least you've learned to say please. I'm sorry Ash, what was that? Ash jumped. Sometimes he'd forgotten that only he could understand Pokémon so well, and it had cost him more than a few homes. Nothing. Pikachu just wanted some ketchup, that's all. He can be a bit of a brat about it, but if it's available I try to give him some. Professor Burnett nodded in approval. Always thinking of your partner, cute. Ash, I hope you don't mind, but I've already enrolled you in our local Pokémon school. This made Ash tense up. Oh, is something wrong? No, it's just, well, I haven't had the best experience with schools. That was an understatement. Between being an orphan and constantly having to move around, he never really got to make friends. Don't worry, the kids in my class are super friendly, Kukui said. They'll make you feel right at home. You won't even have to leave Pikachu here. That was a relief. All right, I guess I can give it a shot. That's great. But don't worry, you won't start until next week. I want to give you a chance to learn your way around the island, and all. Ash nodded in understanding as he finished his lunch. All right. Thanks again for lunch. Do you need any help cleaning up? Oh, you don't have to do that. You've let me into your home and fed me, it's the least I can do. But Burnett wouldn't take yes for an answer, and shooed him out the door. I appreciate the offer, but I can handle it. Besides, Kukui still needs to show you your room. Later that night, Ash was getting ready for bed. Surprisingly, the small space was very comfortable, and he was able to decorate it with his few personal artifacts. A photo of him and his mom, half of a Pokeball he and Gary had fought over, and a signed autograph from Lieutenant Surge were soon scattered around the loft. It wasn't much, but they were his, and he wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. Well buddy, this is it, he said with a sigh. Maybe this will be the last time. It is, I can feel it, Pikachu said, as Ash stroked his fur. Just then, Burnett came up, carrying Rockruff in her arms. Are you guys settled in okay? Just fine, thanks. That's good. Would you mind if Rockruff joins you? He was begging me to bring him up with me. Ash turned to Pikachu. It's up to you, buddy. Pikachu wanted to say no, but not even he could resist Rockruff's puppy eyes. Fine, but I'd better not wind up as this mutt's chew toy. I'd never, Rockruff promised. Why would I do that to a friend? Pikachu smiled, touched that Rockruff considered him a friend, and gave Ash a thumbs up. That's a yes from us. Burnett smiled, and set the puppy Pokemon down, allowing him to rush over and jump onto Ash's bed. Good night, you three. Night, night, night. Burnett smiled, and turned off the light as she descended, leaving Ash alone with his Pokemon and his thoughts. But as he stroked their fur and they snuggled up beside him, he couldn't help but smile. Maybe things will turn out all right after all. The next day, Professor Kukui dragged Ash out of bed to Iki Town, much to Ash's confusion. He was even more confused when Kukui told him they were going to meet with someone called the Kahuna. What's a Kahuna? They're strong trainers chosen by the island deities to watch over and protect the people of their respective islands. They're representatives, if you will. So Halaw's in charge of Mele Mele Island? Should we really be bothering him, then? Kukui chuckled. Nonsense. Halaw's an old friend of mine, he'd be happy to talk. Besides, he's always eager to meet new residents of Alola. They soon came to the Kahuna's humble house, and before Kukui could knock on the door, it swung open to reveal the Kahuna waiting for them. Ah, Kukui. It's been a while, hasn't it? Kukui chuckled, and hugged his old mentor. It's good to see you, Hala. How's Burnett? I don't think I've seen her since the wedding. She's fine. She wanted to take some time off to help Ash here get settled. Hala then turned his attention to the 10-year-old. So this is the Ash I've heard so much about. Despite how friendly Hala was, Ash couldn't help but feel intimidated by the man's boisterous size and personality. Yes. It's nice to meet you, sir. Oh please, just call me Hala. I may be old, but I don't want to feel it. Ash accepted the handshake, only to wince from Halaw's strong grip. Please, come in. I've got some tea brewing if you want any. That'd be great, thanks. Once they were all seated, Hala brought the teapot in and poured everyone some, before handing it out. So Ash, how do you like Alola so far? It's different from the other places I've lived. But in a good way. Hala chuckled and nodded. Yes, I find that all places are different in many ways. But even so, we're all connected by the Pokemon we share our world with. Hey Tutu, I'm heading out to Wow. Just then, a boy about Ash's age came down the stairs, surprised to see Ash. Hala smiled, and waved him over. How? Just in time to meet the newest resident of our fair island. This is Ash, Kukui's foster child. Ash, this is my grandson How. Cool. I haven't seen anyone my age around here in a while. I was going to go play in the woods. Do you want to join me? Ash thought the idea sounded fun, but he didn't want to leave just yet, in case he missed anything important. Go ahead, Ash, Kukui reassured him. We just bore you with what we're talking about. Just don't go too far, you two, Hala called after them. Stay within shouting distance. We will, How promised as he ushered Ash out the door. How led Ash through the forest, the two boys and their Pokemon racing alongside each other. Man, it's so cool that you have a Pikachu. Mine's still a Pichu, not that it matters, but... Ash chuckled. Well, we've been together for a long time. I guess it's just natural he'd evolve so soon. You guys are from Kanto, right? Yeah. Why? And Cantonian Raichu are pure electric type, right? They're not like that here. How laughed. You see, Alolan Raichu are also psychic types. I don't understand why myself, but Graham says it has something to do with the climate here as opposed to elsewhere. I don't care what type he is, I don't need to evolve. Pikachu chattered, but How only heard, Pika Pika. Luckily, Ash was there to translate. That's cool and all, but Pikachu is happy just the way he is, and if he's happy, I'm happy. Pikachu smiled, and nuzzled his cheek. Thanks, Ash. Hao smiled at the sight. Yeah, well, as long as everyone's happy. Help! Ash and Hao immediately shot up when they heard that. What was that? Sounds like a Pokemon, we should go get. But Ash was already sprinting off in the direction of the sound, much to Hao's shock. Ash, come back. That's too far, we need my grandpa. But Ash was too focused to hear him. With a sigh, Hao took off after him. Back in the house, Hala and Kukui were chatting about Ash. You say he comes from Kanto, right? Kukui sighed. Yeah. Is something wrong? It's just, Burnett and I read his case file. The poor kid's been bounced around the system ever since he was 5, with the only friend he has being Pikachu. Sometimes he'd get kicked out for the dumbest of reasons, like not putting Pikachu in his Pokeball or because the family just doesn't like him. I see. You're not regretting taking him in, are you? Of course not, but I'm worried that we won't be able to provide him the love he needs. Hala smiled kindly. Well, I think you'll do just fine. Kukui returned it. Thanks, Hala. Just then, Ash and Hao burst into the room, Ash clutching a baby Rollet. Ash, what's wrong? We found this Rollet injured in the woods, can you help him? Hala gently took the Rollet from Ash, placing a hand to his forehead. He's burning up. Hao, go to the garden and fetch me a roast berry. Right. Kukui, get me some wet rags, got it. Will Rollet be all right, Hala? Ash asked. He will if I have anything to say about it. Rollet was all right, though he wound up spending the night at Hala's house. But the very next morning, the little grass type was flying about, happy as can be. It was a good thing you brought him here, you too, Hala said approvingly. We had to go farther than you would have wanted us, but we couldn't ignore his cry for help, Ash said. Don't worry about it, said Hala. Sometimes rules need to be broken for the greater good. Toucanon. Just then, a toucanon and its flock flew down. When Rollet saw Toucanon, he trilled happily, and flew into his adopted father's chest. Toucanon smiled, and returned the hug. With one last grateful wave, the flock flew away, making everyone happy. Take care, Rollet. Row. Just as everyone was about to head inside, a big shadow floated over them, before landing right in front of them. A large Pokemon stood up, and while Ash didn't quite know which one it was, he got the feeling that it was important. Of course, the reactions of everyone behind him also helped to cue him in. Tapu Koko, Hala said breathlessly. Ash Ketchum, the deity spoke directly into his mind. You have a big heart, in spite of your hard life. I see great things in your future, but also great challenges. Challenges? Ash echoed. What do you mean? In time, you will understand, but until then, take this. Before Ash could question it further, a sparkling stone about the size of his wrist floated in front of him for him to take. I look forward to seeing your journey unfold, but until then farewell. With that, Tapu Koko darted back into the sky, disappearing as nothing more than a streak of light. At first, no one spoke, until Hao broke the silence. Ash, to think Tapu Koko would appear to you, and give you a gift, he must see something special in you. Ash chuckled sheepishly. Ah, I'm not that special, really. Just an ordinary guy. Yeah right, Pikachu scoffed from his shoulder. An ordinary guy who can talk to Pokemon. But Ash was the only one who heard. Later that night, Ash and Pikachu were getting ready for bed, the sparkling stone set up on his desk. Man, was that crazy, Pikachu said as he stretched. Made a new friend, saved a Rollet, met a god. Hard to believe we've only been in Alola for 3 days. Yeah, Pikachu sighed. He knew that tone of voice. Alright. What's up? Usually you're the one chattering like an apom about our day. Where'd this deep thought Ash come from? It's just, that Rollet from before had a family, but he looked nothing like them. So, a Phoebus doesn't look like a melodic, yet they evolve into them? Yeah, but I was reading a book about Alolan Pokemon while we were at Hala's house, and it showed Rollet's evolutions, and they looked nothing like that. As Ash continued talking, he gently scooped Pikachu into his arms and stared out the window at the night sky. And yet, Toucanon treated him like he was his own anyway, like a father should have. To Pikachu's surprise, a hopeful smile crept onto Ash's face, which was a rarity. Someday, I want to have a family like that, even just a mom or a dad. Pikachu smiled and nuzzled Ash's cheek. He was glad to see Ash happy for once. Someday, Ash, I promise. Ash's first week in Alola flew by quickly. He soon learned the ins and outs of the small estate, as well as the nearby Hau'oli city. Rockruff and Pikachu became quick friends, with Rockruff all but officially becoming Ash's Pokémon. But more importantly, he and Hau had become quick friends. Hau became Ash's unofficial tour guide, showing him all around Mele Mele Island. Ash was grateful, not just for Hau showing him around, but for just having a friend in general. He hadn't had too many of those since Gary, and while Pikachu did his best, sometimes he needed an actual human being to talk to. Fortunately, Alola was full of friendly people. When he first heard about the region, he was afraid of being outcast for being a foreigner, as he had in a few other regions he'd had the misfortune of being fostered in, but that was not the case with Alola. No one treated him any differently, and soon he was well acquainted with the people of the island. The Monday after he arrived, it was time for his first day of school. He'd gone with Kukui the day before to meet the principal, who he was surprised to learn was Professor Oak's cousin. He thought the man was nice, if a little weird for his love of Pokémon puns. Luckily, it wasn't any problem for Ash to be put in Kukui's class, much to his relief. While the Alolan natives had been nothing but kind to him and Pikachu, school would be much easier for him if he knew somebody in the class. Even if he was living with them. All right, here's the classroom. Go on in. I need to grab a few of my notes. Ash took a deep breath and walked in through the door. Here goes nothing, buddy. You've got this, Ash. When Ash stepped into the classroom, the first thing he noticed was how many Pokémon were out of their Pokéballs. He knew Kukui said it was common, but even so it was shocking. One of them was taller than its trainer. The next thing he noticed was his classmates. The tallest had black and red hair, and stood straight and stoic. Ash wondered why no one told him to put on a shirt, but considering his foster father was just as guilty of that, he also wondered if that was just some Alolan tradition. The only other boy in the class, aside from himself, was ironically the shortest of the group, and had orange hair. Currently, he was sitting at his desk fiddling with some kind of gadget. There were 3 girls in the class. One had green hair put up in pigtails and was tending to a Bounsweet while talking to a blue-haired girl, who Ash could tell was into fishing just by her outfit. And last but not least, a blonde-haired girl in an all-white outfit sat next to them, silently participating in their conversation while stroking a snow-white Vulpix. Ash made a note to check out a book on Alolan variants when he had a chance. The moment he walked through the doors, all eyes were on him. All of the stares made Ash nervous, but he finally found his voice. Hi? In an instant, everyone swarmed over him, and he soon felt very claustrophobic. Oh my god, you must be the new student. I'm Mallow, that's Lana, he's Kiave. The little guy is Sophocles, and that's Lily. We can introduce ourselves, Mallow, Kiave said indignantly. Yeah, well you didn't, Mallow countered. Before this could escalate further, Professor Kukui stepped in through the door. All right everyone, give Ash some space. I know you're all excited to meet your new classmate, but he needs room to breathe. Everyone backed off, a little embarrassed. Sorry about that, Ash, Lana spoke up. It's just been a long time since we had any new classmates. Ash shrugged. It's all right, I'm just glad you guys are friendly. All right everyone, Kukui said. Let's pick up where we left off last week. Where were we? It was Lily who raised her hand. I believe we were going over status conditions and how to treat them. Ah, yes, thank you. Now let's see, with poison. Ash found the class to be surprisingly fun. While he knew a few of the things covered, it was still good to have a refresher, and even with the things he did know he still learned something new. Currently, he and his class were in the cafeteria. Professor Burnett had made lunch for him, and man did he luck out with this family. Burnett was an awesome cook, a sentiment Pikachu was quick to agree with. Hey Ash, over here. Ash looked up to see Lana waving to him from a large table with his classmates sitting at it. There's plenty of room, come join us, are you sure? He asked. I don't want to intrude. Nonsense. Mallow replied. You're our friend. Ash smiled, and joined them, taking a seat next to Lily. Wow Ash, your lunch looks amazing, Mallow commented. Who made it? Professor Burnett. That's funny, Sophocles added. I didn't think the professors had any kids. Now that you mention it, it does seem odd that we're only meeting Ash now if he lives with them, Kiave pondered. Ash hung his head. That's because I'm not their kid. I'm a foster child they took in. Oh, Lily replied. Where are your parents? Ash's silence was enough to speak for itself. Oh, Ash, Lana said sympathetically. We're sorry, we didn't know, Lily added. It's okay, Ash said, putting on a smile. The professors are really nice, and as long as I have Pikachu, I'll be okay. Heck yeah. Pikachu chirped from his shoulder, startling Lily as she jumped away in fear. Get away. Get away. What? What did I do? Lana was quick to soothe Lily, while Mallow explained the situation to Ash. It's not your fault, Ash. Lily's just afraid of Pokemon. I am not, Lily said indignantly. I love Pokemon, I can't touch Pokemon. Really? How come? Lily sighed and shrugged. I don't remember. All I know is that one day I couldn't so much as pet them. The only Pokemon she can touch is her Vulpix, and it took her a month to even reach that point, Kiave said. Ash smiled and patted her shoulder. But you managed to do it in time, right? Yeah. I love Snowy, I couldn't imagine not being able to touch her. And I love Mommy. Snowy cooed as she nuzzled against Lily's chest, the girl hugging her closer to accentuate her point. Then I'm sure one day you'll be able to touch any Pokemon you want, just don't give up. Lily smiled. Thanks, Ash. Later, school was letting out for the day, and as the class left the building they discussed their plans. I need to get back to the farm, Kiave said. Those stables aren't going to clean themselves, and if I'm not there Momo will try to do it. I need to get back before the lunch rush, Mallow nodded. Just a few more finishing touches, and my device is good to go, Sophocles said with a smirk. I just plan on doing some light fishing, Lana said with a shrug. What about you, Ash? Lily asked, to which the boy shrugged. I don't know. Probably just hang around the house, help with chores, stuff like that. Would you like to come over to my house? She offered. Ash looked to his foster father, who nodded. Go and have some fun, Burnett and I can handle the housework. All right then, thanks Lily, of course. Oh look, my ride's here. Ash was expecting a normal car, but what he got was a limo. Lily saw the shock on his and Pikachu's faces and giggled. My mom is kind of rich, you don't say. If the limo that picked them up was impressive to Ash, then the mansion that was Lily's house was jaw-dropping to him. The mansion was easily bigger than any house Ash had seen, even Madame Muchmoney's. A large gate swung open as they approached. The car pulled into the long driveway before coming to a stop. Deciding to be a gentleman, Ash got out and walked over to Lily's side to open her door for her. Ah, thank you. Well, you did invite me into your house, it was the least I could do. A butler met them at the door. Ah, Miss Lily, welcome home. How was school today? It was great, Hobbs. This is Ash, a new student. I thought I'd invite him to my house to make him feel at home. It's nice to meet you, sir. Likewise, any friend of Lily's is welcome here. I'm going to show Ash around. Can you have some snacks delivered to my room in an hour? Certainly. Thank you. Come on, Ash. The first place she led him was to a balcony overlooking a large garden. Ash's eyes went wide when he saw it. As far as the eye could see there were Pokemon of all shapes and sizes. Wow, are all of these Pokemon wild? Lily nodded. Most of them are just the local residents who come by for food, but some are sent here from my mother's company due to overcrowding. What does her company do? It's a Pokemon therapy company. Basically we rehabilitate injured, abused, or abandoned Pokemon, get them back on their feet, and release them. Here, you can even feed them if you'd like. Really? Lily nodded, and pointed to some feeders nearby. Just be careful, some of them don't like it when you try to stop. Just then, a Pikipek flew up to the balcony, tilting his head curiously. Hey there, little guy. Want something to eat? Pikipek nodded, and Ash tore off some lettuce to hold out to him. Pikipek hopped forward, taking the lettuce into his beak and began chewing. As he did so, Ash began to ruffle Pikipek's feathers, much to Lily's horror. Ash, don't. But to her surprise, Pikipek didn't mind. In fact, he nuzzled Ash's hand, enjoying his strokes as he finished his snack. There you go. Did you like it? Peck. Glad to hear it, thanks for stopping by. Picky Peck nodded, before flying away. Lily could only stare in amazement. How did you do that? If anyone else had tried that, he would have bit them. Ash just shrugged. Don't know. I just have a way with Pokemon, I guess. Doesn't hurt that you can understand them, Lily gasped. You can understand Pokemon too? Ash was about to deny it, but stopped. Too? Wait, can you understand me? Pikachu asked, and Lily nodded. I think it's best if we continue this conversation in my room. Lily led Ash and Pikachu to her room, where they found some chocolate chip cookies and berries waiting for them by the door. Help yourself. Ash nodded, and took a cookie off the plate, while Pikachu helped himself to a berry. So, you can understand Pokemon as well? Lily nodded, and held Snowy close. I don't know why, but for as long as I've been unable to touch Pokemon, I could understand them. That couldn't have been very helpful for your fear. Oh, you have no idea. My mother thinks they must be related. Must be. So, what changed with Snowy? Lily smiled, recalling the memory fondly. Snowy's egg was given to the class by Principal Oak. He wanted to teach us about raising Pokemon from when they first hatch, as well as to compare their Cantonian counterparts when his Vulpix egg hatched. At first, no one could decide who should get to keep the egg, until Mallow suggested I do it. Really, she thought it'd help me get over my fear of touching Pokemon. The rest of the class agreed, so I took the egg home. For a week, it was great, until the egg hatched. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't bring myself to touch her. Mommy, Snowy cooed, gently rubbing against her hand, allowing Lily to pet her. So, what happened? Lily smiled. One day, we were walking through the shopping district when some thugs marched up and demanded I hand her over. I of course refused, but then they sent out their Pokemon. We were outmatched and outnumbered, so. Yeah? I picked Snowy up and ran. I didn't even think about it, I just grabbed her and took off. By the time I realized I was touching her, the police already had the group in custody. That's when Snowy first called me Mommy. Her smile grew. Ever since then, whenever I touch Snowy, I've felt calm, and it gives me hope that one day I'll be able to get over my fear. You can do it, Mommy. I believe in you, thanks, sweetie. Ash smiled at the cute scene, before looking around the room. His eyes fell on a picture. He recognized Lily, but the other three people were unfamiliar to him. There was a woman who looked like an older Lily, a boy a year or two older than her, and a man who looked like an older version of the boy. Hey Lily, is this your family? When Lily saw what picture he held, her face fell. Yeah, what's wrong? It's just, I don't really talk to my family much anymore. Oh, Lily, Ash said, fearing that he had upset her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No, it's fine. It would have come up anyway. Did they hurt you in any way? Lily sighed. Well, not physically, if that's what you mean. Do you want to talk about it? You don't have to, but sometimes it helps. I always feel better after I tell Pikachu about what's bothering me. Pikachu nodded. With a sigh, Lily began her story. It all started a few years ago, when my father disappeared. He was studying some kind of weird energy, and then the next day he was gone. My mother, she was never the same afterwards. She tried to put on a brave face around my brother and I, but it was obvious to us she was hurting. We all were, but it was like something snapped in her. What about your brother? He left on a Pokemon journey a year ago. After a while, I couldn't stand being alone with her, so I moved into this vacation home. I keep in touch with her, and she's glad that I'm alright, but... Tears began to run down Lily's face. I just want my family back. Ash nodded. I understand. Not a day goes by that I didn't wish my mother was still alive. What was your family like? If it's not too much to ask. Ash shook his head. It's not, don't worry. My dad, well, I never knew him. Mom didn't like talking about him, and he never came for me, so I never bothered to go looking for him. But my mom was perfect. She couldn't give me everything I asked for, but she tried to as long as it was within reason. She loved so much, she gave her life for me. If she hadn't pushed me out of the way of that truck. Tears began to roll down his face. Ash, I don't blame myself for her death. It was a freak accident that could have happened to anyone, and I've long made peace with that fact. But, Pikachu and I owe our lives to her, and, I just wish I could see her again, so that I could thank her. Oh, Ash, Lily got up, and gave Ash a comforting hug. Ash sniffled away the last of his tears, before returning it. Thanks, Lily. You're welcome, Ash. Mommy, look. Lily did, to find that Pikachu was squeezed between her and Ash, but instead of jumping away in fear, she hesitantly tried to pet him. To her surprise, she didn't feel afraid at all. Lily, you did it. I did it. Pikachu smiled as she stroked his fur, letting out a content shoo. But, how? I don't know. I guess sharing our emotions helped me be calm enough to do it. Lily, if you ever need to talk to someone about it, I'm here for you. Lily smiled, and nodded. Thanks, Ash, and the same goes for you. I'll keep that in mind. 3 months had passed since they had arrived in Alola, and Ash had quickly settled into his school life. None of the assignments were hard, in fact they were fun. It helped that he had plenty of experience from taking care of Pikachu. He made quick friends with his classmates, too. Plenty of his days after school were spent at one of their houses, whether it be enjoying a snack made by Mallow, who could easily match Burnett's cooking, or helping Kiave with his farm work, or just enjoying a relaxing fishing trip with Lana. It felt good to have human friends again. And Lily was making good progress with her fear. While she couldn't touch any other Pokemon yet, she no longer recoiled in fear when she was near one. When they went to school the day after Ash's first trip to her house, their classmates were shocked that she could be near any of their Pokemon, though they were pleased with her progress. But what shocked Ash the most was how the professors treated him. Most of the foster families he had stayed with had ignored him at best or treated him like a liability at worst. Sure, they had all kept him fed and gave him a place to sleep at night, but by the time they kicked him out it wasn't a surprise. But not the professors. They never treated him like anything less than a human being, and always made him feel welcome. Whether it be taking him to a battle royale match live, or Burnett helping him with the less savory parts of homework, or even small little handwritten notes Burnett would sneak into his lunch, they truly wanted to make him feel at home. And they did. In fact, if he didn't know better, he might even think they were treating him like family. It's raining, pouring even, but Ash doesn't care. He could catch pneumonia if that's what it took, but right now Pichu's life was in danger, and he needed to get him to a Pokemon Center and fast. Just a little bit farther. Ash, don't worry, Pichu. Nurse Joy will fix you right up. Shoo. Ash knows what's coming. He's played this night over and over again in his head, but this time will be different. Soon, they came to the crosswalk, the same crosswalk that it always is. Delilah, in her haste, almost runs right across, but Ash stops her. Mommy, the sign says don't cross. Delilah looks, and sees her son is right. Good eye, Ash. If you hadn't spotted that, it wouldn't be good. Ash smiled. Maybe this time they would all make it out all right. Suddenly, the screech of tires filled the air, and the same car came round the corner much too fast. Ash prays that they'll be safe, but the car begins to flip, heading right toward them. Ash, look out. Before he could react, Ash is shoved away, rolling along the ground as he clutches Pikachu to him. When he looks back up, his mother is nowhere to be seen. Just the smoldering remains of the car. Mom. No. Ash wakes up with a start, sweat running down his face as he tried to calm his racing heart. Pikachu is awake at once, pouncing on Ash and nuzzling his face. Ash, it's okay. We're safe, everything's fine. Ash sighed, embracing his best friend. Thanks, buddy. You had the dream again, didn't you? Ash nodded. Every time I think I can save her, I fail. Ash, you can't change the past, you know you can't. I know. But I thought in my dream, just then, the downstairs hall light came on, and he heard footsteps coming up the ladder. A minute later, Kukui popped his head into the room. Ash, is everything all right? I had a bad dream? Kukui took one look at Ash, and knew it was more than just a bad dream. The kid was still shaking, and tears were starting to fall down his face. Come on, how about I get you some warm milk, and we can talk about it? It's all right, I just need to get back to sleep. I'm sorry I woke you up. But Kukui was already dragging him out of bed and downstairs. Come on, you'll feel better. Despite his protests, Ash was soon sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of warm milk. Burnett had joined them, with Kukui getting her up to speed. Now, Why don't you tell us what happened in your dream? Ash sighed, knowing they wouldn't let up. It was the night my mom died. We're running to the Pokemon Center to get Pichu help, and we're at that crosswalk. It's always that crosswalk, no matter how much I try to change it, it's always that same one. Always? You mean this is a recurring dream? Ash nodded. I don't have it every night, but often enough that I know it when I see it. Professor Oak thought it might be some sort of repressed guilt, but I didn't understand any of what he said after that. Kukui nodded. What happened next? I stopped her from crossing, and for a minute I thought everything would be all right. But then that car comes around the corner and flips over. The next thing I know, I'm on the ground just as it hits her. Ash sniffed, trying to will away his tears. Even in my dreams, I can't save her. Ash, you know what happened wasn't your fault. I know, but I was hoping maybe if I could stop it in my dream, somehow that would make everything okay, but I guess not. His foster parents walked over to him and gave him a big hug. He was startled, but didn't reject it. I'm sorry I woke you up for something so trivial. Sweetie, we know it isn't fair that this happened to you. No one should have to deal with this, but you should know you don't have to hide your feelings. Burnett's right. We can't make the pain go away, but if you need to talk about it, we're here for you. Okay. Ash smiled, the last of his tears finally disappearing. Okay. Good, now let's get back to sleep. Would you like it if Rockruff slept with you? Ash smiled. Please? I think I would feel better with some extra protection. Sure. Just go get settled in, and I'll bring him up. Ash nodded, downing the last of his milk before climbing back up to his bedroom. Pikachu was there, waiting for him at the foot of his bed. Well, I think he'll be all right, but they said to feel free to talk to them? Pikachu nodded, and curled up into his arms as he crawled under the covers. A minute later, Burnett came up with Rockruff, the little puppy practically leaping from her arms onto Ash's bed. Don't worry, Ash, I'll chase away those nightmares. Ash chuckled, and rested his head against the pillow as Rockruff curled up at the foot of his bed. Burnett smiled, before turning off the light. Good night, Ash. Good night, Mom. The last word was said so quietly that the woman didn't even hear it. Heck, Ash didn't even realize he had said it, or if he did he was too tired to process it. But one occupant of the room did. Pikachu smiled, and relaxed into Ash's embrace as he embraced him. Whether Ash knew it or not, he was beginning to see the professors as family, and he had a feeling that they felt the same way. Maybe, just maybe, he could keep his promise to Ash after all. Ash groaned as the morning sun hit his face. He was never a morning person, but for some reason today he felt even less willing to wake up. His body ached, his nose was stuffed, and his head hurt worse than it ever had before. Morning, Ash. Morning, Pikachu. Immediately, Pikachu noticed that something was wrong. Ash, you don't sound so good. I'm fine, the boy protested. I just need to wake my body up, that's all. Ash, you're not fine, you're sick. Please, get back to bed. But Ash ignored him, and stumbled his way downstairs. Pikachu just sighed. That boy is going to be the death of me. Ash stumbled his way into the kitchen, where Burnett and Kukui were waiting. Morning. Ash, what's wrong? You don't sound so good. I'm fine. Falling to the floor did nothing to convince them of that, especially when Burnett placed her hand on his forehead. Oh my, Ash, you're burning up. It's just a headache, I'll be. But he was cut off by his dinner the previous night coming back up all over the kitchen floor. Sorry. Don't worry about it, kiddo. You just go back to bed and get some sleep. But what about school? Don't you worry about that, you just worry about getting better. Ash wanted to protest further, but Kukui hoisted him into his arms and carried him back to bed, essentially tossing him onto his bed. Get well soon, Ash groaned, but was too weak to respond as the man returned downstairs. Although he couldn't see him, he could hear Pikachu snickering beside him. Shut up. Ash remained in bed all day, and was miserable. His body ached, and he could barely even move. Not helping matters was Pikachu absolutely refusing to let him get up for any reason other than to throw up. Ash, I swear to Arceus, I will shock you into unconsciousness if you try and go anywhere. Well, I have to do something, the boredom is killing me. You can barely stand. How do you plan to do anything? Watch me. But before their argument could continue any further, Burnett peeked her head in. How are you feeling, Ash? Right as rain, the boy said, trying to hide how sick he was. Pikachu just snorted. Yeah, right. Luckily, Burnett didn't buy it, but she did have an offer for him. Tell you what, if you let me help you down, you can watch TV downstairs. How does that sound? Ash nodded as vigorously as he could. Anything was better than staring at the boring walls of his bedroom. Yes, please. Burnett smiled and helped him out of bed. And while you do that, I'll make you a bowl of soup. How does that sound? Sounds great, thanks. So Burnett led him downstairs and set him down on the couch. Rockruff was there and hopped into his lap. Just make yourself comfortable, Ash. Rockruff, don't let him overexert himself. Got it. Before Burnett left for the kitchen, she turned on the TV. It was a rerun of Detective Lackey, a show Ash had seen every episode of more than once, but it was better than nothing. So reluctantly he settled down, with Pikachu and Rockruff cuddling up to his sides. A few minutes later, Burnett returned with his soup. Thanks, Burnett. You're welcome, sweetie. Anything else you need? Just some water, please. Of course. A minute later, she returned with it and left Ash to enjoy his meal in peace. And while Ash vehemently refused to admit that he was sick, he had to admit that the soup did make him feel better. Kukui let out a long sigh as he stepped through the door to his house. All day long, the class had been asking questions about Ash. Where was he? Is he okay? And other such things. He was glad that it was a Friday. Hi honey, Shish. Look. Kukui glanced at the couch, to find an adorable sight. Ash was asleep, curled up under a blanket with a wet rag on his head. Pikachu and Rockruff were snuggled up against him, with Ash's cap resting on Pikachu's head. He finally passed out an hour ago. His fever's gone down, and he hasn't been sick since this morning. That's good, Kukui nodded. Just then, Ash stirred from his slumber. Easy there, Ash, Kukui said as he helped him to his feet. How are you feeling?
Better. That's good, Burnett nodded. I think a weekend of rest will do you some good. Your classmates send their regards, Kukui said, to which Ash nodded. I think I'm going back to bed. Here Ash, let me help you. Ash just nodded, not even trying to resist Kukui's assistance as he led him back up the stairs and into his bed. Get some rest, Ash. I will. Thanks, Dad. Kukui froze. Did he hear Ash correctly? He turned around to question his ward, but Ash was already sound asleep. Chalking it up to just him hearing things, Kukui turned around and went back to the kitchen, not seeing Pikachu's knowing smirk. The next morning, Ash was feeling better, but not 100%. I wonder what's for breakfast. Morning, Ash. Ash turned to Pikachu, and saw that the electric type had a massive grin on his face. That wasn't a good sign. Morning, buddy. Sleep well, Ash groaned. He could tell Pikachu was up to something. Alright, what is it? I know you called Kukui dad yesterday, and Burnett mom last week. Ash's eyes went wide. You don't think they heard, did you? I doubt it. Well, Ash took a deep breath. He couldn't hide anything from Pikachu. Alright, I'm growing attached to them. And, if they were to adopt me, I'd say yes. I knew it. We need to tell them, now. Are you kidding? We can't tell them. Why not? This could be your chance. Or I could lose the first real home I've had in years. Ash, the 10-year-old sighed, and gave Pikachu a hug. I know you want me to be optimistic, and I'm trying, but, if they don't feel the same way. Pikachu nodded. Alright, I won't pester you about it. Thank you. But I do think they feel the same way. You should tell them eventually. I know, buddy. Ash was much better by Monday, which was great too, since Professor Kukui announced to the class that day that they'd be taking a field trip to Pony Island on Friday. Wow, Pony Island. Sophocles, excitedly. It'll be a good way for you guys to see Pokemon you may not usually get a chance to, Professor Kukui said. Just be sure to get your parents to sign the permission slips.
I bet Ash doesn't need one, Lana said teasingly. After all, he lives with the teacher. Everyone, including Ash and Kukui, had a good laugh at that before the bell rang. All right, I expect all of those permission slips to be signed by tomorrow. With that, everyone took their leave, and began chatting excitedly about the trip. What kind of Pokemon do you think we'll see there? Mallow asked. I don't know, but I bet there's plenty of water types along the shore, Lana said. Maybe I'll find a nice electric type for Togedemaru to play with, Sophocles added. I hope there's some fire types for Turtonator and I to test our strength against, Kiave finished. What about you, Ash? Lily asked. I don't know, Ash exclaimed excitedly. I bet they're all great. But as the six friends continued discussing the trip, they didn't know that a pair of godly eyes were watching them from afar. Tapu Koko had been keeping a close eye on Ash, and was well aware of his turmoil. He wanted to help him, and now he knew how. He just hoped Tapu Fini would be willing to help. Luckily, everyone's parents signed the permission slips, and Friday morning they were all in Seafolk Village, discussing how things would go. All right. We need to meet up back here at 3 to head home, and remember, stick with your buddy. Right. Now then. Lana, you'll be with Mallow, Sophocles you'll be with Kiave, and that leaves Ash with Lily. Ooh. Lana said teasingly. Get to spend some time alone with your boyfriend, I bet you're looking forward to that. Lily blushed, and tried to look away. Stop it, Ash and I are just friends. Oh, come on, I'm just teasing. All right. Settle down you two, Kukui said. Just try and get as many pictures of the native Pokemon as you can before time runs out. But more importantly, have fun. A few hours later, Lily and Ash were in the Pony Plains, taking pictures of the wildlife as they went. Wow, look at that herd of Miltank. I've never seen wild ones before. Check out those Raticate. The ones in Kanto aren't nearly as big as them. Just then, Ash began to notice a thick fog roll in. That's odd, Kukui said the forecast was supposed to be clear today. I've got a bad feeling about this, Ash. Yeah, me too. Ash. Ash. Where are you? Ash. Ash looked around, but couldn't see Lily anywhere. Lily. Lily. Where are you? Lily. Lily. I can hear you guys, but I can't see you. This made Ash even more confused. They were right next to each other a minute ago. How did they get separated? Lily. Stay where you are, I'll come to you, but he got no response. Something's not right here. Come on, buddy, right. But as Ash continued walking, he only found himself more and more lost. This is odd, we should have run into either her or somebody else by now. And it's getting colder too. Oh hush, you have your fur to keep you warm. Ash? Is that you? Ash froze in his tracks. He'd recognize that voice anywhere, but it couldn't be her. Ash, honey, it's me. Afraid to be wrong, he slowly turned around. There, not 10 feet away from him, was his mother, looking just as alive and young as when he last saw her. He couldn't believe his eyes. Was he dreaming? Mom? With tears in her eyes, Delilah nodded. It's me, Ash. Mommy. Without even thinking, Ash sprinted towards her, tackling her in the biggest hug he could muster as tears ran down his face. He hadn't cried this hard since he lost her, but this time they were tears of joy. Mom, it is you. How? Why? Delilah smiled, and gently brushed his tears away with her hand. That's not important right now, sweetie. Just know that I'm here, and enjoy what time we have together. Ash smiled, and nodded. I'd like that. Ash and his mom spent what felt like an eternity together, making up for all the years they never had. With tears in his eyes, Ash recounted what he'd been through. It just hasn't been the same. Professor Oak tried, but he couldn't take care of me and Gary at the same time at his age. After that, it's just been one foster home to the next. Oh, honey. I'm so sorry you've been through that. Don't be. It's because of you that Pikachu and I are alive today. I just wish we all could be a family together. Delilah smiled. I know, honey. I wish that too, but I think you already have one here. You mean the professors? I do. Ash sighed. Pikachu thinks so too, but I'm afraid. Afraid of what, sweetie? Afraid that they won't feel the same way. That they'll be too freaked out, and send me away again. I just want to be part of a real family again. Delilah sighed, and gave Ash a hug. I know, dear, and I just know that someday you will be. Thanks, Mom. Just then, a distant clock struck 3. Delilah sighed. Mom, what's wrong? I'm sorry, Ash, but our time together has to end. Mom, No, I still have so much to tell you, to show you. I know, sweetie, but I can't stay in the realm of the living any longer. Just know that I'll always be watching. With tears in his eyes, Ash nodded, and could only watch as Delilah began to fade away. Mom, no matter what happens, I love you. I love you too, Ash. Be strong, and take care. With that, the fog vanished, taking Ash's mother with it. As the sun returned, Pikachu could see that Ash was still crying. Ash, you okay? No, but I will be, Pikachu nodded, and licked his cheek. Ash. Thank goodness you're all right. Just then, they found Lily coming up to them, along with the rest of the class. Ash, what happened? Lily said you just disappeared. This weird mist rolled in, and we got separated, and what? And I saw my mom. Ash waited for someone to say that was impossible, but no one spoke up. No one, that is, until Kukui. Tapu Fini. The island guardian. The very same. Legend has it that she can produce a mist that allows worthy people to peer into the afterlife and see their loved ones. So Tapu Fini thought I was worthy. You must be something special, Ash, Kiave said. All right guys, Kukui interrupted. Let's get going. The fairy will leave without us if we don't hurry. With that, the group of 6 began hurrying to the port, but Kukui kept a close eye on his ward. He and his wife had been considering something for a while, and Ash's story made him want to do it even more. He just hoped Burnett was on board. That evening, after Ash had gone to bed and the dinner dishes were clean, Kukui and Burnett were alone in the living room. Despite his best attempts to keep it hidden, Burnett could tell something was on her husband's mind. All right Kukui. What's up, huh? What makes you think anything is up? You've been quiet ever since you two got back from Pony Island. This kind of behavior I expect from Ash, but you? Spill the beans. Kukui sighed, and told Burnett all about Ash's experience. Burnett gasped, deeply sorry for Ash. Oh, the poor thing, yeah, which is why, yes. Kukui sighed. It was now or never. I think we should adopt Ash. When Burnett didn't respond, Kukui continued. I know, we've only been married for less than a year, and we wanted to foster a child first. But Ash needs a loving family, and I know we can provide him with that. Kukui, last week, I swore he called me dad. I mean, he was still sick, so maybe he didn't mean it, but it made me feel happy like I never have before. Kukui, and I know you've been growing attached to him too, with your little notes and how you dote on him, and Rockruff. Kukui. Kukui jumped, finally snapping out of his rambling. After a big sigh, Burnett smiled. Let's do it. Really? You're right, Ash needs a loving family. He can't keep bouncing from foster home to foster home, and I know he loves Alola. Plus, like you've said, we've grown attached to him. Let's do it. Kukui grinned, and gave her a big hug. I'll call the agency tomorrow and set up an appointment. We should talk to Hala, too, Burnett nodded. We'll need references, and this house is a mess. Kukui chuckled. I know, but we'll make it work. We can do this, I know we can. I love you. I love you too, and I love our son. The next day, the professors took Ash up to Iki Town to see Hala and Hao. Hala had asked Ash to bring the sparkling stone Tapu Koko had given to him. Ash was reluctant to give away such an important item, but Hala promised to give it back. I promise Ash, no harm will come to it, Hala told him, to which he nodded. I trust you. Ash, why don't you and Hao go play? Burnett suggested. We have a few things we need to discuss with Hala. Okay. Ash said. Come on Hao, the Malasada shop should be open. All right. Hao cheered, and followed Ash out the door. Be careful. Hala shouted after them. We will, they promised, and left. Hala then turned to the professors. Shall I make us some tea? Something tells me this is more than just a cordial visit. Please. A few minutes later, Hala had 3 cups of tea ready, and the kettle placed on the coffee table for more. All right then, what can I do for you? The couple told Hala all about their plans to adopt Ash, Hala nodding along as they explained everything. Once they were done, he smiled. I think that's wonderful, you two will be great parents. Really? Kukui asked, to which Hala nodded. Kukui, I've known you since you were a boy no older than Hao, and I know you have the biggest heart out of anyone. And Burnett, You're so kind and caring. Neither of you would be bringing this to my attention if you hadn't already made up your mind to do it. Coco, Hala chuckled, and I see Tapu Koko agrees. This made the professors breathe a sigh of relief. The agency is doing a house inspection Thursday. Do you mind acting as a reference? Not at all. I should have his gift done by then, too. Will you guys be coming to the party Friday? If all goes well, we want to reveal to him then. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The professors nodded and got up to leave. Thank you, Hala. When they get back, tell Ash he's free to stay here, but to back by curfew. Of course. Oh, and you too? The professors turned from the door back to him. I know Ash feels the same way. Come Thursday afternoon, the inspection came. Kukui had asked Principal Oak to cover his classes for the day so that he could be there. Are you Kukui and Burnett? We are, thanks for coming. Don't thank me yet, you still have to pass. After shaking their hands, the inspector stepped in. Let's begin. The woman looked over every nook and cranny in the house, trying to find anything that could be dangerous or a reason to deny their application. Burnett clutched Kukui's hand tighter, worried. Kukui smiled, and gave it a gentle squeeze. It's okay, it'll work out. I hope so. At last, the inspector came back. Everything seems in order. We've already checked with your references, and they gave their praises. That's good, Kukui nodded. That just leaves one last thing. The questions. Kukui and Burnett gulped, and sat down at the table with her. First off, what are your occupations? I'm a teacher at the Pokemon school here on Mele Mele Island, and Burnett's a scientist for the Ether Foundation. Will your jobs interfere with your ability to care for Ash? Burnett shook her head. He's in Kukui's class in school, and we're both available at night and on the weekends. If for some reason both of you need to be away for an extended period of time, does he have somewhere to go? Kahuna Hala said he could look after him if needed, and several of his friends' families have made it clear he's welcome to stay with them. The woman nodded, scribbling down everything in her notes. Then I have just one final question for you. Why do you want to adopt Ash? Kukui sighed. Because we want to give him the family he deserves. The poor kid hasn't gotten any breaks since his mom died, and we know we can do right by him. We may have only been married for less than a year, but we love each other, and we love Ash, Burnett continued. For a moment, everything was silent, the agency woman just staring at them. Finally, she wrote something down before tearing off the sheet and handing it to them, and smiled. I think we can let you adopt him. Really? You've done everything to provide a safe home for him, and it's clear to me that you care about him. Your answer was exactly the thing I wanted to hear. He's in good hands. Kukui and Burnett smiled. Thank you. Just doing my job, ma'am. A few hours later, Burnett and Kukui were back at home, adoption certificate in hand. No going back now, no, but I wouldn't even if we could. Kukui smiled, and kissed her forehead. Neither would I. I'm home. The two of them jumped when their son came in through the door. Thinking quickly, they pushed the papers down into a cabinet just as Ash walked through the door. Hi Ash, how was school? Great, how are you feeling, Professor? Kukui faked a cough. Better, thanks. Cool. Well, I need to go do my homework, later. With that, Ash disappeared up the ladder, leaving them alone. The two smiled, they were going to make Ash very happy tomorrow. The sun slowly rose over Alola, spreading its warmth across the tropical region. As usual, Pikachu was the first one to wake up between him and Ash, the boy snoring loudly next to him. Usually, Pikachu would be willing to let him continue sleeping, but not today. Come on Ash, wake up. But Ash continued to snore. Pikachu tried shaking him, but that didn't work either. Pikachu sighed, knowing there was only one other option. All right, but you asked for this, Pikachu. Ash shouted, the thunderbolt finally jolting him awake. Pikachu, what was that for? You had to get up eventually. Ash looked at his clock, and saw that it was time to get up. Grumbling, he got up to his feet. Well, you usually wait a half hour before you try doing that. Yeah, but not today. Why? What's today? Pikachu blinked, and looked at Ash with bewilderment. Did you seriously forget today is your birthday? Ash froze. He hadn't, but after so many years in the foster system, He'd stopped making a big deal about it. The last birthday party he had was when he was staying with Professor Oak, and even that was just him and Gary sharing a pizza and watching a movie. Pikachu sighed. Well, anyway, I got you something. You didn't have to get me anything, buddy. I know, I wanted to. Pikachu hopped down and walked over to Ash's backpack. After moving things around a little, he returned with his gift. It's not much, but happy birthday. The gift was a small bouquet of flowers. Ash took them, holding them in his arms in disbelief. The first birthday gift he'd received in years. Pikachu, I know it's silly, but you deserve something. Ash. No one deserves to not have any presents on their birthday, so. Before Pikachu could finish his sentence, Ash grabbed him into a big hug. I love it. Thanks, buddy. Pikachu smiled and hugged him back. You're welcome. So, what's on the agenda for today? Ash shrugged and began getting dressed. Same as it always is, I guess. Go to school, hang out with friends, play with you and Rockruff, maybe go for a walk. Kukui and Burnett don't have anything planned? Ash shrugged. Why would they? I mean, they know your birthday, it would have been on the forms. If they do, they haven't told me, maybe they want to surprise you? To Pikachu's relief, Ash smiled and stroked his fur. If that's the case, we'd better not ruin the surprise, right? Right. Now come on. Let's get some breakfast. The day proceeded like any normal day for Ash. No one wished him a happy birthday, though he wasn't surprised. He hadn't mentioned it, so it'd be odd if they knew it. Although he couldn't help but notice everyone was acting rather secretive. At long last, the day ended, and the class was dismissed for the day. All right. Ready for the weekend, buddy? Yeah. Ash, wait up. Turning around, they saw Lily approaching. What's up, Lily? Do you want to come over to my house? I could use the company? Sure. I just need to. Can you call them when we get there? It's kind of important. Ash was confused, but nodded. Okay. Great, our ride should be here any minute. Sure enough, her limo that Ash had taken plenty of rides in pulled up, and they climbed in, Pikachu taking a comforting position on Lily's shoulder while Snowy curled up in her lap. Is everything okay, Lily? It's fine, I just don't want to be alone right now. Ash nodded. Okay. As the car drove along, Ash couldn't help but feel like something was up. He may not be an expert navigator, but he recognized that they weren't going the right way. In fact, it seemed like the driver was going out of their way to prolong the trip. Hey Lily, I think we're lost. Nonsense, we're just taking a different route. Look, here we are. Sure enough, her mansion came into view, and the driver pulled through the gate. Usually Hobbs would be there to welcome them, but today he was nowhere to be seen. Where's Hobbs? Oh, he's probably in the garden. Come on, let's go check. Ash wanted to protest, but Lily was already dragging him along to the garden. Once there, a wonderful sight awaited Ash. Surprise! All of their classmates, the professors, Hala, Hao, and Hobbs were waiting for them. Huge piles of food were sat on a table, and a huge banner that read, Happy Birthday, Ash, hung over everything. This is all for me? Lily nodded. It was the professor's idea. Not that we wouldn't have done something anyway, but they were the only ones who knew when your birthday was. Kukui and Burnett stepped up and gave him a big hug. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Ash smiled and returned it. Thank you. It means a lot. The party was a success, and Ash had a great time with the games and food. At long last, they brought out the cake, a 3-tiered chocolate cake. After lighting the candles and singing Happy Birthday, it was time for Ash to make a wish. Be sure to think really hard about it, Mallow said, and wish with all your might. And don't tell anyone what it is, Lana added, or it won't come true. Ash didn't have to think hard at all. He knew what he wanted, because it was the same thing that he always wanted. I wish for a family that loves me and won't abandon me, he thought to himself, before blowing out the candles. Everyone clapped and cheered, and at last the cake was cut into. Who made this? Ash asked. It's delicious. I did, with Burnett's help, Mallow said. Thanks, it's the best thing I've had in years. Burnett and Mallow just blushed. After the cake was finished, it was time for the presents. From Kiave, he got a book on Alolan legends. Lana got him a fishing rod, and Mallow got him a cookbook titled, cooking with ketchup, which Pikachu was thrilled about. Lily got him a new outfit, which he loved, and Sophocles got him a new handheld console and games. Hao and Hala went next. Wow, a gift card to the Malasada shop. Thanks, Hao. You're welcome. Now we can both enjoy delicious Malasadas. Hala's turn was next, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a familiar-looking bracelet. Is this your very own Z-ring? I molded your stone into it, for I knew Tapu Koko would want you to have one. So when the time comes, you have my permission to undertake the island challenge. Wow, thanks, Hala. Of course, Ash. Finally, it was time for Kukui and Burnett to give Ash their gift. Their box was much smaller than the others, but Ash didn't mind. But he was surprised to see that his gift was a stack of papers. Confused, he picked them up and read them, his eyes going wide. Does this mean what I think it means? I'm not dreaming, am I? A hard whack on the back of his head from Pikachu was enough to disprove that theory. You're not, Ash. As of today, you are officially our son. Ash began to shake, tears streaming down his face as he tried to comprehend it all. At first, Kukui and Burnett were worried he would reject it, only for the boy to rush forward and tackle them, giving them the biggest hug he could as he cried tears of joy. With tears of their own, the two parents hugged their son as everyone else shed a few as well at the beautiful scene. I love you. Ash choked out at last. I love you, Mom and Dad. We love you too, son. Pikachu watched, trying to hide his own tears as his best friend hugged his new family. Unfortunately, Snowy was quick to notice. Ah. Is Pikachu crying? No, he sniffed, unconvincingly. I'm sweating through my eyes. But he was so happy for his best friend. He finally had what he'd always wanted, and so very much deserved. That night, Ash sat in bed, his adoption papers still firmly grasped in his hands. I still can't believe it, buddy. After so many years, I finally have a family. I know, Ash. I told you it would happen. Ash smiled, putting the papers on his desk with his other gifts before giving Pikachu a big hug. You did, and I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For not letting me give up. No matter how depressed I got, or how much I doubted it would happen, you always remained optimistic, and never stopped believing I would be adopted. And you were right. Pikachu smiled, and returned the hug. You're welcome, Ash. Just then, Burnett came to check on them. Ash, you're still up. You're usually in bed by now. I know, it still doesn't feel real, you know? Burnett chuckled. It is real, I promise. And your father and I will always be there for you, understood? I do. Burnett walked over to his bed, and set Rockruff down, allowing the puppy to curl up at the foot of it as Ash lay down. Once he was settled in the covers, she kissed his forehead, and turned off the light. Good night, Ash. Good night, Mom. Burnett smiled, and walked downstairs, allowing Ash to drift off to sleep. This time, Ash didn't dream about his mother's death. This time he dreamt about her and his new family spending time together in a beautiful field, giving him a peaceful rest. 2 months had passed since Ash's adoption, and he couldn't be happier. Kukui and Burnett loved him as their own, and he happily returned the sentiment. No longer was he plagued by nightmares of his mother's death, nor did he feel like a burden. For the first time in years, he had a family, and a proper home. It was everything he had ever hoped for, and more. One morning, rather unusually for Ash, he was up bright and early, much to Pikachu's confusion. Who are you, and what have you done with Ash? He's never up this early voluntarily. Oh, hush buddy. Today's the day I start my island trial, and I want to be ready. But you don't have to meet with Hala until noon, and how many times have I overslept for something important? Point taken. Ash, breakfast is ready. Coming. Come on buddy, time to go. Right. Ash and Pikachu bounded down the stairs and into the kitchen, where Burnett was making pancakes. Oh good, you're awake. I was afraid I'd have to sick Rockruff on you. Ash chuckled, and happily accepted a plate. Not today, Mom. I wouldn't want to risk missing out on the start of my journey. Have you decided on which starter you'll choose? Ash chuckled, and shook his head. I can't, they all look so cool. Pikachu huffed. I don't know why you need a starter when you have me. Ah, come on Pikachu. It's tradition. You know no one could ever replace you. Pikachu smiled, and nuzzled his cheek. I know, I just wanted to hear you say it. Kukui and Burnett smiled. Ash had long since told them about his inexplicable ability to talk to Pokemon, knowing that they wouldn't judge him for it. Well, I know no matter which one you choose, you'll take good care of them. Without a doubt, come noon, Ash was in Iki Town, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Waiting for him were Hao and Lily. Ash, you finally made it. It's about time you got here. What are you talking about? I'm on time, Hao just chuckled. Yeah, but the order in which we choose our starters is based on who got here first. So it'll be me, then Lily, and then you. That's not fair, you live here, Hao just shrugged. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Ash just sighed, before smiling. Ah well, them's the breaks. Are you excited, Ash? You bet, Lily. I'm a little surprised to see you here, though. Lily blushed. While she'd been making progress with her phobia, and was now comfortable touching Pokemon she knew, she was still apprehensive about wild Pokemon. I wanted to do this, both to conquer my fear, and to find my father. I don't know how, but I know he's still out there, and maybe, if I bring him home, Mother will smile again. Ash smiled, and gave her a hug. You can do it, I know you can. Lily smiled, and returned it. Thanks, Ash. As the clock struck 12, Hala stepped out of his house, a big smile on his face. Welcome. Are you all ready to receive your starter Pokemon? Yeah. Excellent, but remember that they are not just your Pokemon, but companions and friends, so treat them with respect. After the trio promised to do so, Hala released the three. You can choose between Rowlet, the grass and flying type, Litten, the fire type, or Poplio, the water type. All have their strengths and weaknesses, but in the right hands any can become a capable battler. Hao, you may go first. Hao smiled, and immediately walked over to Rowlet. What do you say? You want to be my partner? Rowlet cocked his head, considering for a moment before leaping into Hao's arms, cooing happily. All right, you and I are going to be best friends. Ro. Hala nodded, before turning to Lily. An excellent choice, Lily? Lily scanned her two options, before approaching Litten cautiously. The kitten stared at her, not making a sound. Hello, Litten. I'm starting my journey today, and I was wondering if you would care to join me. That is, if you want to. Litten stared at her for a few more minutes, before running up to her and nuzzling against her leg. Lily recoiled momentarily, but eventually knelt down to pet him, feeling more relaxed. I can tell we're going to be good friends, Litten, she said with a smile. Hala then turned to Ash. Well, Ash, I'm afraid you don't have a choice. I hope you don't mind. Ash approached the Poplio, who did a cute little dance to make him warm up to her. Needless to say, it worked. Ah, aren't you cute? Thank you, and look, our outfits match. Indeed, the blue and white stripes of Ash's shirt matched perfectly with Poplio's fur. With a smile, Ash picked her up, and lifted her into the air. What do you say? You want to go on a journey with me and Pikachu? Poplio smiled, and clapped her flippers. Yeah, great, welcome aboard. Hala watched these interactions with a smile. I look forward to watching how your journeys progress. Good luck to all of you. Thank you. Everyone turned to leave, but Hala held back Ash. Is something wrong, Hala? No, Ash. I just wanted to say I'm glad Poplio finally found a trainer. Finally? You mean she's been overlooked before? Hala nodded solemnly. I didn't want to say anything in case it would influence anyone, but Poplio has been turned down by many prospective trainers for her appearance. I was hoping you'd choose her, because I know you'll take good care of her. Ash nodded in understanding. He knew all too well what it was like to be unwanted and unloved, and just like Burnett and Kukui had done for him, he'd give Poplio the treatment she deserved. Don't worry, Poplio, he said. You're in good hands. Yeah. Pikachu shouted in agreement. Ash is awesome. You'll love it with us. Poplio smiled, and nuzzled Ash's chest. She could tell Pikachu was right. Kukui and Burnett cooed as Poplio flopped around, wagging her flippers about. Ah, isn't she cute? Did you pick her because of the color scheme? Ash chuckled. Well, I went last, so I didn't really get to pick her, he said. But I probably would have anyway. Only you, Ash, Pikachu sighed from his shoulder. Well, I think you chose a winner. You'll definitely go far with her. Ash chuckled, and held her and Pikachu close. As long as I have my friends by my side, there isn't anything I can't do. Ash's journey was far from ordinary, but he didn't mind one bit. For starters, he was surprised to find out that he was still expected to go to school during his island trials. Not that he minded, though. He loved his classmates, and he was always learning something new. Though this did put him a little behind Hao when it came to completing the challenges, something Hao would tease him about whenever they met. Ash didn't mind, he knew it was all in good fun. But things really started to get weird when he met Nebby. After having a dream where the little cosmog was created, he found the little star cloud on his way to school. Knowing this had to be a sign, he took Cosmog under his wing, and soon found him caring for the Pokémon like his own. That's when things really started to get weird. It involved the Ether Foundation, Lily's mother Lucamine, her brother Gladion, and her mother getting abducted by Ultra Beasts. It took a lot of effort, even Nebby evolving all the way into a Solgaleo, but in the end Lucamine was safe, sound, and able to reconnect with her children. It had been the first time Ash saw Lily smile in a long time. Unfortunately, the weirdness didn't stop there. After letting Nebby roam free, now that he was much too big for his house, Ultra Beasts started crossing over into their world and causing trouble. To counteract them, the Ether Foundation formed the Ultra Guardian Task Force, consisting of him and his classmates. They had some wild adventures, but in the end they always managed to keep Alola safe and return the beasts back to their home worlds safely. Beyond that, his journey was fairly normal. He had a few run-ins with his dad's old rival Guzma and Team Skull, but Guzma was the only one to give him much trouble. Ash wouldn't think much of him, but Guzma wanted to abolish the Alola League Kukui wanted to start. This was his dad's dream, something he'd been working on for years, and Ash wouldn't let some salty jerk ruin it. Luckily, after Ash beat him during the league, Guzma quietly slunk away, never to bother them again. Ash stood proud, the trophy in his hands. He couldn't believe it, it didn't seem real. He won. He, an orphan from Pallet Town, was Alola's first champion. This was the second best day of his life. Not that this wasn't amazing, but nothing would ever beat being told that Kukui and Burnet had adopted him. Ash? Pikachu asked from his shoulder. We won, buddy, he whispered. We did it. Yeah, Pikachu smiled. We did. Ash looked around, smiling proudly at his entire team for their effort. Of course, there was Pikachu, his best friend who never let him give up. Then there was Primarina, who had evolved from Poplio and proven all of her doubters wrong, and was now loved by the populace for her elegance and grace. Then there was Lycanroc, long since evolved from Rockruff. After helping Rockruff get out of an underground fighting ring, he stuck to Ash like glue, practically catching himself. Ash didn't mind, he'd grown attached to the loyal puppy, and he'd more than proved his worth. Although he was surprised when he'd evolved into the never-before-seen Dusk form. Then there was Torcat, whose backstory always made Ash tear up. A stray Litten who'd been taken in by a Stoutland, who roamed the streets to find food for both of them after Stoutland got too weak to do it. Unfortunately, not even Nurse Joy could stop old age, and Stoutland passed away when Litten went to get help. After letting Litten cry into his chest for as long as he needed, Ash offered to let him join the team. He knew what it was like to lose a parent, and wanted to show Litten the same love he wished he had been shown for so many years. Litten, having grown to respect Ash, accepted. His most surprising team member was Mimikyu, who he'd rescued from the abandoned thrifty Megamart as it collapsed. Mimikyu hated him at first, more specifically because of Pikachu. It took a long time, but eventually he managed to coax it out of him. Apparently, his old trainer released him when she found a real Pikachu, and told him that she only kept him around until she found one. It took a while, but eventually Mimikyu realized Ash wasn't going to abandon him like that, and he'd been a loyal member of the team ever since. And last but not least was Melmetal, a species that along with its pre-evolution Meltan were thought to be extinct, but they discovered a small group of them washed up on Mele Mele Island. After saving it from Team Skull, and helping it find its head nut, Melmetal had insisted on joining Ash's team. Together, the 7 of them fought with pride to make it where they were now, and in the end, Ash's Lycanroc triumphed over Gladion's, making them champions. Thanks, guys, Ash said. You're all like family to me. Everyone pounced on Ash, giving the boy a big hug, making him laugh as he returned the affection as best he could. Up in the stands, Kukui and Burnett watched with proud smiles on their faces. He did it, Kukui whispered. Our son did it. I couldn't be prouder, Burnett agreed, letting a tear of joy run down her face. Excuse me? To their surprise, they found Professor Oak making his way to them. Are you the ones who adopted Ash? Yes. Professor Oak, right? Ash said he stayed with you after his mother died. Professor Oak nodded solemnly. For a year, yes. His mother was one of my students, and a close friend. I would have adopted him in a heartbeat, but I couldn't take care of him, my grandson, and all of the Pokémon at once, so I had to put him in the foster system. I had always hoped he'd find a loving family someday, and the nice girl with green hair told me you adopted him a year ago. He shook Kukui's hand. I just wanted to say thank you for giving him a loving home. I know if Delilah could see you all now, she'd be proud. Thank you, Kukui said. He's a great kid, we're glad we did it. Yes, he truly is, Professor Oak agreed. Later that night, after fighting off a Guzzlord and having a match against the Masked Royal, who Ash was surprised to learn was his father, and Tapu Koko, Ash plopped down on the couch, his trophy now placed proudly on a shelf. Phew. What a journey, huh buddy? You said it, hard to believe it's only the first one. Just then, Kukui and Burnett came into the room, still beaming with pride. So, have you decided on where to go next? Ash shrugged. Not really, Dad. Though I was thinking about going back to Kanto and seeing Gary again. Maybe I'll challenge the Battle Frontier? Well, if you haven't decided yet, maybe you could wait a little bit? Ash perked up. Maybe, but why? Burnett smiled, and placed a hand on her stomach. Well, in a few months, we'll be expecting a new family member.
Wait, do you mean you're going to be a big brother?
Ash jumped up and hugged his parents, tears of joy running down his face. His parents hugged him back, the family enjoying the moment for as long as they could. Unbeknownst to all of them, there was another spectator of this moment looking in for outside. Delilah smiled, happy her son finally had the love he'd always sought. I'm so proud of you, Ash. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts and reviews in the comment box. Now I will see you in the next video.